Hi, this is Justin Humphries, and I'd like to welcome you to Objection to the Form. Today I've got a special guest, Ryan Shultz with Lea Shultz Law Firm. Ryan's an attorney that's been practicing here since 2008, I believe, and primarily practices in the area of family law. Ryan, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Ryan, so I did a little bit of research on you besides from what I've known you from being around town in this area, and I saw that you came here from California.
Yes, I did. Don't hold it against me. Everybody seems to.
I understand. So you were doing corporate investigation. So what does that mean, or what kind of things are you doing as a white-collar crime investigator?
It kind of like it sounds, but less exciting. Basically, you're going to be looking at public documents. I became really adept at public records. You look at public documents, you go through and find, basically clients hire you to find financial irregularities or good old-fashioned dirt. Somebody's wanted for bank fraud under a different name. Somebody didn't graduate from the University of blank. Somebody didn't do this. Basically, it's going through a series of really boring financial documents and putting together somebody screwed up somewhere.
Do you watch Billions?
I don't watch anything that is not on Disney Plus. If it's not on Disney Plus, I haven't seen it. Is that a show or a program of some kind?
Oh yeah. It's kind of a financial crimes type show. It's got some of that. That's kind of my limited understanding of some of those things you were talking about.
Do you watch lawyer shows? I don't. Except for Better Call Saul.
Some of them.
That's amazing.
Some of them I do. I remember that was a question in law school we had. Who is your favorite TV lawyer? And mine was Mitch from Old School. But I think they have. But no, I don't watch like I like Boston Legal too. That was a good one. But I don't like the kind of shows where they're on there talking shit, like the Suits, for example, or things like that. I think that's nonsense.
It would just drive me nuts because it's like, you file something and then the next scene they're in the courtroom. I'm like, that 6-month period where you had to prep your case, they're not going to show you that. Then I get annoyed and turn back on Dora the Explorer.
Well, yeah. So if you want to watch court TV, it's certainly not as interesting as maybe some of those 30-minute or to 60-minute courtroom dramas, but yeah, the stuff we do is not as much fun. So what made you decide to get into law from corporate investigation?
Buddy of mine I went to law school with is an NC State guy, and he moved back to I went to law school with, moved back here, and this was when the world was kind of going to hell in a handbasket. Well, the first time. Yeah. It's about 2008. And I took a buyout from company and had some time and some money. So I took the Great American Road Trip out here to help him with his case, and we goofed around and spent some time at a place called Wrightsville Beach. And from LA, that was like the coolest, quaintest little, like it had some San Diego in it, but it was still really southern. And I thought, this is super cool. I'm going to come back eventually. And then 1 month turned into 2, turned into 6 months.
Did you take 40 straight across America to get here?
Well, I mean, I took some detours. My people are from Arkansas. Yeah. Which most people don't admit. Yeah. Well, I took some fun back roads and saw where we landed in the 1800s before we got kicked out and had to come out west.
Nice. So, of all the fields of law, how do you decide to go into family law? And first of all, maybe I should talk about
I wasn't provided any of these questions ahead of time, by the way. Not a one. So that's a good one. A very good attorney, and he's one of the kind of like old guys who you think that kind of wouldn't be hip to anything. Just kind of a small town general practitioner. They're incredibly bright, and they really know how law fits. Every piece of law fits together. He said at some point, I was early in my career, he said, your clients choose you, you don't choose them. And that was kind of the way domestic worked for me.
Well, and so, I guess I said family law and you've said domestic. And so I guess kind of to clarify that, that's typically your divorces or custody, support, property distributions, things of that nature.
Yeah, you have that right. That's I just used it. I don't know why I say domestic. I think Jim says domestic, and I just kind of glommed onto that. Yeah. I don't know why family seems cheesy to me.
Yeah.
It is that. It's custody, financial issues, property division, and then you've got ancillary claims to interspousal torts, assault, battery, theft. old school stuff like that, and then you've got some kind of more. You've got privacy torts, which are issues, invasion of privacy, which you can still happen, and then you've got revenge porn. You've got a whole new world now.
Well, I'm certainly interested in discussing revenge porn, and we'll get on that in a little bit. But you brought up something, kind of the general areas of what's going on, and it seems like from my perspective, in domestic or family law, it's one of the areas of the law where your prospective clients have, a lot of times they've got a lot of preconceived notions when they come in that many times aren't correct. And it can be kind of difficult kind of explaining to them the way things work or the way things shake out. Do you have difficulties kind of explaining, dealing with misconceptions that people have with family or domestic law?
Like they think something's, by misconceptions, do you mean that they think something is true when in fact completely is not? Like
people come in telling you what's what in a consultation because their sister's brother had that situation or they had, they read this on Google or something like that.
Yeah, the internet's been something, huh?
Yeah.
The internet's been something. It's like my doctor says, stay off WebMD. Just do it. Don't go there.
Well, I'm glad we've got kind of a...
You're going to have Crohn's disease. If you just keep reading, you're going to have it eventually.
I guess we've got LegalZoom and we've got some large websites, and I forgot what some of the other ones are called. We don't have one as prevalent as WebMD because that'll.
Stay off the WebMD.
It's a hypochondriac's worst nightmare.
you're gonna have something eventually if you keep reading.
What type of misconceptions do you deal with on a frequent basis?
Generally, I think across the board, and I'm overgeneralizing, which is I think the point of the question is people will come in and say, well, my spouse, fill in husband, fill in wife, my husband or my wife said that if I leave, she's going to get me for abandonment, or if I do this, there's no way I'll ever see this again. I say, okay, we'll talk about North Carolina law and we'll talk about the facts of your case. And we'll start working through some solutions. But why, just as a general, why do you think that? Well, my hairdresser told me. Or my cousin is a lawyer in Texas, and he said you never leave the residence no matter what, under any circumstances. And I say, okay. And it's building those. I mean, people have, there's also, for whatever reason, in this town or state or however it is, it may not be just local to here. People think if you file for divorce, the other party has to consent to it. And the way I have to explain it, it's like a breakup. You've broken up with somebody before. Like, you don't need their consent. It's just done. So there are those. But I think abandonment, marital fault, sexual fault.
Well, mentioning abandonment, and it seems like that's one of the common disputes that arise in marriages when they're breaking up is who's going to get the house and who's going to leave. And so it could be, that both want to leave and kind of leave the mortgage aside, or it might be one of those standoffs where both spouses refuse to leave, but then they're trying to separate. So I guess to kind of break that down, first, do you have to leave the home to be separated, or can you separate under the same roof?
Good questions today, Justin. You're on fire, man. No, North Carolina does the concept is they changed the statute a few years ago. It was later than 95. That you don't need a separation agreement to leave. And that is a very popular misconception, is that we need to have a separation agreement to leave. No, you don't. And the concept of the policy behind that is that that would, only wealthy people that can afford attorneys can separate. Poorer people that couldn't afford attorneys or have access couldn't, because they couldn't afford to, go to an attorney's office and draft a separation agreement. The only thing you need in North Carolina to separate is physical separation and the intent not to be married anymore. So it's almost the way you look at it is once you have those two things, your clock starts running on your 1 year before you get divorced. The spot is, and Justin kind of nailed it. It was a great question. You nailed it with, can you separate in the same house? And the answer is no. Often, no. We've got this huge house. I'm upstairs. He is in the basement. We never see each other. We're separated, right? And I got to say, actually, no. There's a case on point where there was the leading appellate cases where there was an office adjacent that wasn't attached to the residence that had a separate post office box or a separate separate mailing address. The court said no dice. You're still together. You have to have a physical separation.
So then I guess with the fear of abandonment, you would almost have to abandon the home if you want to separate from someone who's hunkered down and refusing to leave.
There is your skill set. You're walking right into the giant hole that's created. Yes, the statute requires for us to start dividing property and start the process. I just used air quotes if that would made it easier. That you have to have a physical separation. And then the concept, the counterbalance of that is well, I'm going to get you for abandonment for leaving. And abandonment probably needs a few minutes of discussion and then a few minutes of how it's been my experience and most other lawyers' experience of how judges deal with abandonment.
So with respect to infidelity, a lot of times I would see people that would view the whole point of the case is proving infidelity. And from my experience, unless you're really in the alimony realm, it doesn't quite carry the weight that some people would think. What significance or how important do you think the misconduct, the sexual misconduct of the parties are in a domestic setting?
Big question, loaded question. I'll make it as fun as I possibly can because I see most of everybody here falling asleep. You're nodding off.
Oh, I'm up. I'm up.
When you have where I'm from on the West Coast, in most Western states, it's not as big a deal. And I think that starting to kind of move is come a little later to the Midwest and South with regards to that. The concept of no-fault divorces. But for where we sit right now, our statutory scheme is that marital misconduct in the form of adultery, in essence, of illicit sexual misconduct, is a deal. And you kind of look at it when somebody comes into your office and say, this has happened, or I've done this, or my spouse has done this. You have to slot it into certain spots. Let's put it this way. Equitable distribution is the device, the way that most Eastern states divide their property. And that means it's what happens to the bank accounts, my retirement, the car, the lamp, everything tangible and intangible. Generally, if one party cheated, that's not going to matter much for that, unless the party that was doing the cheating took their new boyfriend to Aruba 3 times in a year and spent some money from the marital estate in order to further that relationship. Garden variety, they went out to lunch or something like that. It's not going to move the financial needle.
So the equity is more focused on the financial impact than the morality or the who's right and wrong with the relationship.
Equitable distribution has a real pragmatic view of that. Just because somebody cheated, that's not going to really move the needle much with regards to you're going to get less or you're going to get more because someone cheated. The only focus there is if there's an economic impact of that cheating. Hey, I sold my wife's wedding ring so I can buy my new girl something. Yeah. If that's the concept, a court is going to have some serious scrutiny about that. But otherwise, no.
So in your role as an investigator, did you ever investigate any marital misconducts or like any type of PI type work?
No, I wasn't in a van eating Chinese food like with the headphones on. That would have been cool, but no.
Do you work with PIs frequently in your current work?
No. Yes. We have, and most domestic lawyers do. They have a PI they like or a PI they trust, and you're gonna. That's still old school. Yeah, there's still some of that.
So, how often, when you retain a PI to go catch someone in the act or to go get evidence of cheating, or infidelity, does nothing come up at all?
We live in a world of digital. We live in a world where it's. Everything is on the grid. So cell phone records, texting records. Generally, if a spouse comes to you as a lawyer, they've got a real strong suspicion. And then if they want to take their wallet out and pay for a PI, they've got a really strong suspicion. So you're kind of betting into good numbers at that point. But yeah, there's it may be a time one of the parties has the flu and no one's having sex that week, or someone's out of town and you're not shacking up for that amount of time. Certainly, it's been times in my career where you've set it all up and you followed somebody and done this, and you kind of end up with a whole lot of nothing.
You ever, I guess, had a PI catch somebody in a compromising position in kind of a entertaining way or anything that's?
I wish the best. That would be something, but no. The best legal movie ever is a movie called Intolerable Cruelty.
One of the things that my big takeaway from Intolerable Cruelty was the Massey prenup.
We didn't talk about this previous, by the way. He just recalled specific parts of that movie. I'm really impressed.
Well, no. So I guess my thing that I wanted to know was, do you have a template, or is there the airtight prenup in North Carolina, or is there a North Carolina equivalent, like where they have the Ryan Shultz prenup, or
It's the Lea Shultz prenup.
Lea Shultz prenup.
It's the Lea Shultz prenup.
Now, are we talking what size document is the Lea Shultz prenup?
That will depend on the size of your estate. I mean, generally,
Understood.
if you're 23 and getting a prenup, I mean, you have an Xbox and a Ford Bronco that you're upside down on. But if you're usually you see it is more in second marriages, where someone's held on to something from marriage one and they've got a business, or you've got a lot of things with protecting. But those can be remarkably intricate.
So I guess, is it fairly rare for somebody on a first marriage to come in with a prenup?
It's rare, yeah. I'll say that. I'll get behind that statement.
Yeah, before people wise up to the ways of the world.
That you generally don't have on first, particularly under 40, because it's the whole concept of it is what's going to happen in the future, and you're solving for X. Yeah. Also, as an aside, you can't waive alimony after you get married. So it's kind of a correlation of our prenup. You can before the marriage, but after the marriage starts, no matter how bad you want to, you cannot waive alimony. So, heads up.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. So that's part of the Lea Shultz prenup, and that's
part of the Lea Shultz prenup.
Important thing to have, even though, So would you, let's say, to your guy that's 23 and he's got his Xbox and his Bronco and he's marrying his college sweetheart, would you suggest broaching that subject, or go see Ryan Shultz for the Lea Shultz prenup, or?
The standard line is, it's probably better to protect yourself. It depends, kind of where you are. The majority of what you're going to acquire during your marriage is going to be marital. But the concept of a prenup is it's going to say, well, we don't have to play by those rules. We can decide this is mine and that's yours. It's always a good idea to have that consult.
Well, because when people break up, I guess or especially marriages, things can get a little bit bitter, and a lot of things can happen out of spite, which kind of leads into the topic I wanted to talk about. Finally, was revenge porn. So to tie it into what we just discussed,
are we at 45 already?
I don't know. I don't know where we are, but so with revenge porn, first of all, is there any kind of marital privilege for that?
No. You don't. It's not. It's a great question. It's not a confidential communication between spouses the way that would be defined as marital privilege. No. So no, simply because you're married doesn't provide a defense for. It's cool. My wife sent this to me while we were married, and now we're not married, so it's fine if I share this with the world at large.
Well, I guess to back up, what do you think of when you think of revenge porn, or what would you call revenge porn?
The statute's name is not revenge porn. It's something far more boring. But that's its slang, and I think probably more accurate title. What do I think the same thing I think somebody on the street would, a layperson, anybody, is that I'm going to get back at you for perceived wrongs by this. I mean, how awful is it, and how dehumanizing is to essentially just say, well, here's your nakedness for everybody to see. Let's see if you go through with that lawsuit.
What is the name of the statute? I was unaware that there even was a revenge porn statute till you brought that to my attention.
It's 14. Spare the boring details. It's called Disclosure of Private Images, and that had been the subject of a lot of scholarly debate, and then they amended it, I think, just a couple years ago to tweak it a little bit. But the core concept is that you're not allowed to produce an image, whether it's a video or a picture, of somebody doing something or somebody completely naked or partially naked for the purpose of. It's written. There's an intent prong of it too.
Okay. Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. So if you've got, for example, somebody gets a pair of new glasses and takes a selfie, and then you're like, what? I think those glasses looked ridiculous. I'm gonna post that online. Does that fall into the purview of the statute?
No, there has to be sufficient. You got to have some genitalia and or intimate parts. I think
so.
have some intimate parts.
We're talking full nude here, or is it just anything that's nude that?
No, it's that's a great question. No, it's you're looking of partially nude as well. I think that's in fact, I'm most positive. I know this. It's the breast of somebody, a female over 12, anything below the waist, combination of the such. And then you get into, there's a variety of we'll talk about that in a sec, but just to kind of finish up your question, no, it doesn't have to be completely all.
Do they distinguish between genders? Like, are dick pics fine, but not anything else, or something along those lines?
No, those aren't fine. If you post them yourself, man, like that's on you.
Yeah.
But no, there is no distinction between male or female. Nude images are nude images. Sex acts are sex acts. Or depending on who we go with it, bisexual or non-binary gender.
So let's say I'm or for any of the listeners or anybody that's interested in this, if you're sitting around at home and you get the classic send nudes text message, is there anything you can do to protect yourself when you decide I want to send nudes, but I want to make sure that this doesn't end up on the internet or wherever? Do you have any strategies involved for how you can protect your image?
There is no prenup for sending nude photos to your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse. No. Once I think the unison position across the country, and this is governed very much by state statute as well, is that once it leaves your phone, once it is posted, it is no longer yours.
So once you've released this picture, you've sent your nude to that special someone, and then the next thing you see it on the internet, and you're mad, you want to sue, and how am I going to prove that who posted it on the internet?
Another great question from the mind of Justin Humphries. I'll refrain from taking a real deep dive and go just from the surface. Difficult. It's difficult. It's not as if that if you don't have an eyewitness, you need yourself a documentary witness. And what I mean by that is you need an IP address. You need think of it as almost a murder case where everybody's expecting some forensics. They want some DNA. They want a thumb. They want a blood or a hair follicle. They want some real hardcore evidence. And that's the way I think that people are looking at it. If you don't have an IP address or you can't prove that it came from this computer, you're left with circumstantial evidence. With we just had a fight and then it was posted on this and was posted on his account. Is there some plausible deniability that my friend Jeff came over and saw it and posted it? Yeah, there is. But proving that it's that person is, I think, the biggest hurdle. And that is, I think, as we go forward in this new digital world, it's not new, but I mean the concept of this action being criminalized is we're going to have to find ways to make that easier. And we're going to have to find, I think that's going to be appellate law, just narrowing things down a little bit.
And I imagine that, the investigation would be the most difficult part. And so do the tools currently exist to subpoena internet providers or to try to figure out the IP address? And even if you can track that down, are you aware of any tools for blocking? Is there something like kind of where like Call ID on a phone where you can where you can kind of erase your identity when you're prank calling somebody or trying to sell them a car warranty? Do those kind of tools exist in the
Has anybody ever tried to sell you a car warranty?
This morning. Yeah,
Really?
it was ridiculous.
I've
And,
never been sold. I may be susceptible to it.
I was brewing my coffee in the morning up here, and then I heard my phone ring, and I ran across the office to grab it, and it was somebody calling me about a warranty on my. At least they knew the vehicle. This time it was my Volkswagen I haven't had for 5 years. Is what they were trying to give me a warranty for, but yeah, so the way the call warranty people trick you into thinking it's a nice person from Lumberton calling you. Can you do the same thing if you want to post some pictures of your ex-girlfriend?
I think the answer to that question is perhaps. How's that for a lawyer answer?
Yeah, no, that's typical.
I don't know for certain. I know an internet protocol address is stamped in at the same time anytime somebody is logged in and somebody provides something on the World Wide Web. That is there tools that I'm not aware of that somebody could mask, manufacture, or do something other with their IP address. It's potentially possible.
Well, let's back up from that. So then, we've got to know the circumstantial end of, hey, I only sent you this one picture. You're the only person it could be, even though I can't tell where you sent it. But let's say you're sending, nudes everywhere, every day. You're sending videos. You're keeping people.
I stopped doing that in the late 90s.
Well, yeah, and I mean it's good that I guess the new world, as you call it. A lot of these things are fairly new, but some people want to get the content out there.
Yeah.
And so if you're one of those people, how you end up on Pornhub or you end up on some kind of porn site. I wouldn't know the addresses of any of those to bring up, but so you end up on there and it's you're not getting paid.
Somebody in your world.
Well, yeah, but I'd have to ask some of the folks on staff to see if they could give me some examples. But if you find that, what do you do? Do you have any copyright resources to protect kind of your art or however you want to put it?
I tell you, that's actually a great question. Would it make the job of the attorney bringing the lawsuit far more difficult if that particular person, that's just their jam, is sending nude photos every which way? And then, as a defendant, you've got some great plausible deniability. Well, they're sending them out everywhere. That could have been any one of these people. Girls, guys, friends of a friends, friends of a friends. And I happen to know I'm 40, so I'm kind of, and I've been married for a while. But I know some younger people that seems to be part of the younger person fabric. I'm not painting everybody with the same brush.
I think that's part of the courtship now.
That's a deal. And, I mean, how do you know that they're not trading photos with friends? You lose there was a case in California which actually it's kind of the fact pattern you mentioned, where somebody put a photo of their ex. I don't know the exactitudes of the case, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but the core concept is when a person put a nude photo, sent it to a boyfriend or girlfriend, and that person, it wound up on a pornography site, and that site refused to take it down. Lawyers were very clever, and they thought, okay, what am I going to do? Well, they sued the website for copyright infringement, that she owned the images to her, and they were violating her copyright. They copyrighted that photo. So I mean, and that dovetails with the position of this is a bit the Wild West. You've got some federal statutes that are very, very difficult to maneuver for a variety of reasons.
And you get into situations like who owns. I guess if it's a nude picture, that's one thing. But then if you get into your home porn, do both of it own the top copyright together, or is it both participants, or is it whoever's shooting it, or how does that work? So it's a lot of interesting issues to flesh out. But I guess the bottom line of it is that if you find yourself on any one of those sultry sites, you do have some copyright repercussion, at least to demand them to take it down.
Do have some. You'd have to copyright the images of your photo or your video. And that it's a great point too, that you're gonna have to, if you made that with someone else, would they have the right to copyright that as well? So and you're looking at a situation where anybody that they see a nude image of themselves online that they did not post, the first thing is your jaw's gonna hit the floor, and then oh my God, my parents gonna see this, and then what can I do to take this down? So you're gonna do anything and everything to coerce yourself to do that. The concept of disclosure of private images in North Carolina is that criminalizes that, and it's a felony, first of all, if proven. The civil penalty for that is you can get punitive damages, which is, in our world, somewhat of a holy grail that's designed to coerce behavior. And it's $1,000 a day fine for every day it's up.
And that would be against the person that put it up or against the company that's publishing it?
The person that put it up. No one's suing. This doesn't allow you to sue under this statute hosts of, you're not going to sue Facebook or YouTube or whoever's done that.
Gotcha.
But you're gonna sue the person that knowingly disclosed.
Well, I think the big takeaway here is, while it might feel satisfying at the time to share something like that or to put together those type of videos, you need to think about the potential repercussions and make sure you don't have that sort of thing getting out in the public sphere.
I would think that, but I mean, it's there's First Amendment objections to this statute too, and there's First Amendment defenses that people have raised in other states that have kind of gained traction from scholarly articles and legal commentators. But yes, the easiest way not to be a plaintiff or defendant in one of these is not to send.
And I believe you have personal
artistic
experience. I believe you have experience prosecuting.
I was gonna say, where are you going with this?
Yeah.
I have personal experience with the photos.
No, not as a publisher or a model or whatever, but as fighting for the victims of revenge porn or of having their images used against their will.
Yes. How's that for boring?
Yeah. Well, nah. That's what. So have you seen one of these all the way through yet, or is it?
I have not. There's the very few have been filed in North Carolina since the statute. There's been a couple of ones, a real successful verdict, and I want to say Fayetteville.
That sounds about right.
There was a real successful, very early verdict there, but I haven't. The North Carolina law it's kind of in its beginning stages of. I'm not aware at this point there's been an appellate case.
Well, it's exciting to have you here, someone on the cutting edge of the law in North Carolina.
We're using that term really loosely.
Fighting the battles of the new frontier. So I appreciate you coming out, and please see Ryan if you've had any difficulty with your image if you find your image on the internet, or if you need the Lea Shultz prenup. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, it's been informative. Thanks, I appreciate it, Justin.